All right, I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about markers and regions. So markers and regions are very helpful when your projects get kind of large and you have various parts and you want to kind of keep things organized so that you know you can quickly navigate the project to different sections. And also in the case of regions, also move things around, rearrange them. So it could also be a very useful composition tool. So here I have a project that's something I did for a dance show that right now looks really plain. It doesn't have any. It's not really well organized or anything. The tracks all look the same. I mean, this was kind of in a later stage of the piece, so I didn't really need to do much. But I want to kind of use this project as an example of how I could maybe organize this a little bit better. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do Command Shift arrow down and reduce the size of these things a little bit. I'm also going to get rid of the mixer so I can see my tracks a little bit better. And in fact, you know what? I can expand them a little bit since I don't have the mixer now. Yeah, that's fine. Everything fits. All right, so let's just listen to a bit just so you hear what it sounds like. Anyway, so you can hear that there's some very clear sections and it's very much based on the meter. And you can see how, for example, on measure 5, something comes in. And so let's say right here, there's a violin that comes in. Well, for example, one thing we could do that I could definitely have done is take the drums and percussion parts and put them all down here. So this is not so much related to markers and regions. It's more just kind of a visual thing. So here I have the drums, I have a cello part, I have a guitar part, vibraphone, violin. And so maybe I'll put the vibraphone down here. That's not what I wanted to do. So now I have drums, percussion. Actually, let's put the percussion up here. And vibraphone, cello, guitar, violin. And then there's a clarinet, and then these are kind of extra sound effects. I have an alarm sound, and then there's a video. We'll talk about video later. But for example, I could take all these and give him a specific color. For example, if you remember, we had a shortcut for this. Oh, actually, that's not the one we want. We want these to be all the same color. So we go to Track Color, Set to one random color. So it's not going to change the color of this whole entire thing. And then we can make these, we could do random colors, like that. So the guitar and the cello and the violin, they all have a different color, okay? This is kind of nice, and if you want to do a different random color, you just do this a couple times. So that if you're down here, you're like, oh, what instrument is this? Oh, that's the clarinet, because it's I don't know, blue, is it blue? Okay, and then the video and the alarm could just stay like that. So that's already a little bit kind of helpful. But let's just say that I want to mark the segment as being the point where the violin comes in. So I can put my cursor there and make sure the play bar is right where that begins. And I press the letter M. And what that does is it adds a marker. Now I can double click on this and I can call it violin entrance. Okay, so now I have a reference point, which is kind of nice. And let's say that now it's the violin. And then there's the other. And this is where the vibraphone comes in. So I'm going to mark that as vibraphone entrance. Okay, and so now you can go between different parts. Well, visually, it's a little easier to find, but also practically, if you press the number 1, it's a very cool feature in Reaper. If you press the number 1, your play bar will go right to the first marker. If you press the number 2, it'll go to the second marker. And if you had more, you could press number 3, etc., to shift to different ones. Or you can use brackets to jump between. So you could use the square brackets to go back and forth between different parts. So if I had multiple markers, let's say I have another one here, I can now use square bracket to the left, paragraphic to the right, and shift between all these different things. So, so yes, this is a really good good system for navigating the project. Now, the thing about it is with markers, though, one thing that you might not be that great sometimes is that it's kind of time based. So wherever you put it in the timeline, that's where it stays. So if you move the music or say the items over, the markers don't move. And so that could be sometimes a problem. It just kind of depends on what you need them for. Now, another thing that you could do with markers is you can double click up here in between two markers, and that automatically will select the anything that's between the two. It will make a selection between the two. I can do the same thing here, and that could be very helpful if you're trying to get rid of a whole chunk. You put markers between at the beginning and the end, and then you double click, and then you press delete, and you could cut off a whole section if you want to. Good. Now there's another thing called regions that I mentioned. So what we'll do is we'll select this, and actually what I'll do is this. I'll select the beginning, and then I will go to insert and then region from time selection. There's a shortcut for this too. So for marker, you can do you can insert a marker by pressing the letter M. If you do Shift M, it'll create a marker and it'll ask you what you want to call it. So let me backtrack a second. So you know how I can double click on this and I can prompt it for the name? I could do the same thing for a marker by doing Shift M at a point. And now not only does it create a marker, it asks me, what do you want to call it? And I want to call it hello, right? And then you can delete it, of course, by just removing marker. So anyway, back to this, I go to insert, and this time I'm going to do region from time selection. So that's what I want because I've selected. And I could also use Shift R. And now what this has done is it created a, oh, I'm sorry, that's actually not where I wanted it. I'm sorry, I wanted it right here. So I'm going to do Shift R, and I'm going to create a region there. Now you can name the region also. You can do right click, edit region, and you can call this intro, for example, intro. Okay, now we'll call this, let's create another region here, and we'll call it, let's just call it violin, right click, edit region, violin, okay? Okay, so here's what's neat about this. So unlike with markers, these are actually treated as like blocks. And so if I wanted to repeat this twice, I could just, oh, let's say that I wanted to move it to a different place, I could just drag the whole thing and move it as a block. If I wanted to duplicate it, I could do the same thing. And so now what I've done is let me go back actually. So I'm doing command while I'm clicking and dragging. So I guess it would be control on a PC, and then I click and drag it, and you see that little plus. I don't know if you can see, it's kind of small right here. I'm still clicking, so I'm trying not to let go, but it's a little plus arrow. And when I let go, what it did now is it created a duplicate of the intro. Okay, so now I actually have a bunch. But so what it did is it basically inserted a whole nother intro in between the initial intro and the violin. And so now this is repeating. As you can see, things are moving further away. So I could do the same thing again and add another one. So now I have four, the intro section repeats 4 times, and then the violin comes in. So as you can see, it's a very useful composition tool. So you can think of these as blocks of sound. So I could put the intro, let's say I wanted the intro again between the violin and the vibraphone part. Then I put it like that. Okay. Now this is probably not going to sound very good, but it doesn't matter. The point is that you can, when you compose a song, you can think of it as sections, which is kind of mostly what a song is usually. And you can say, oh, I want that intro part that I had there, I want to repeat it, and then I want to change something. So you can move things around as a block, which is really, really, really cool. Now there's another neat feature. If you go to View and do Region Marker Manager, you get this window, and here you can double click on a certain section, and what Reaper will do is it will expand. It'll take that section. In this case, it was the intro, the third repetition of the intro, and it'll fill the screen with it. So let's say I only want to work on focus on the violin part. I can just do it like this, okay? So you just double click there, and the entire violin part now is presented to you right here. So I can just start right here, and there it is. And it gives you some information about the length. It tells you this is 12 bars long, this is 4 bars long, where it starts, where it ends. And you can rename it here. If you decided to call it something else, you could do that. And remember, the violin, don't confuse the two. Markers and regions are different things. So the marker, it actually shifted the marker position, which is kind of nice. That actually is very, very good. So it shifted the marker position. But remember, the two things are separate or independent. So I can move the marker away, and that won't affect anything. But if I move the region, that will affect where things are happening in terms of the sound. So they have a different purpose. They have different uses. They're both helpful. It just depends on what you're trying to do. When I do sound editing of a recording, I typically use a lot of markers so that I know where things are supposed to be, and not so much in regions, but in a composition like this, regions, particularly early on in the process where I'm sort of like throwing ideas out, I will often think more in blocks of sound and move things around. So that's for organizing the project. This may not be so helpful right this second, but when you do your project, you'll come back to this video and you'll say, aha, thank you. All right.